In this video, I want to talk a bit about psychology and address some of the contemporary issues that I think are occurring, particularly related to how it's perceived by the general public, but also psychologists as well, in terms of a focus on two aspects of psychology that have its roots in the early tradition of psychology and the emergence of psychological science that began in the early 19th century with the experiments of Wilhelm Wundt. And I think the two major issues is from a philosophical perspective at its foundations. There's a focus very much of psychology as something that resides in the head, or that it occurs within our thought processes or our direct mental processes. And while that's true, psychology is much broader than that, and it pertains also to behavior and the self ultimately as well. And so when we're thinking about psychology, we should think about more perceptions and behavior and how they interact, as well as how this is distributed throughout the body. So it's not just the head, but also the spine and the peripheral nervous system and various psychological processes and perceptual processes that are occurring throughout us rather than just up here. It's spread out, right? And that pertains to when we're at rest and not moving at all, compared to when we're active, or we're engaged in various aesthetic activities such as drawing, which is a deeply psychological process that's connecting various mind-body processes with also the environment. So we see these constituencies formed there, or even playing an instrument, same thing, where there's an auditory system and it's connected between the head and various routes in the body that's associated with perceptions ultimately. So we have these constituencies formed between perception, our psychological processes, and our physical processes. And this is very, very useful when we're thinking about not just psychology, but bridging the gap between psychology and behavioral science, because sometimes there can be tension between those two ways of thinking and traditions. And another big focus that tends to be psychology gets, like when you hear psychology, you might jump to is an over focus on the clinical aspects of psychology rather than the everyday aspects of psychology. And clinical psychology has its early roots within this physician tradition, which we're trying ultimately to address illness and prevent disease, prevent disorders and dysfunctions, but also its origins are very much in this scientific and philosophical groundwork, trying to figure out the nature of the mind and the nature of these parallelisms between what's occurring within the psychological processes and behavior, as well as in the body, and make inferences about this that can deepen our understanding of the self as well as nature, and ourself in relation to nature, which is very, very important. And so when we're thinking about psychology, it's important to think about it more this broad way rather than jump to the clinical or the focus that psychology is all up here or all mental, because it's not. It's much, much larger than that and broader than that. And when we can recognize that, we can develop more of a psychological literacy that can help us optimize our well-being in everyday life, and also ultimately cultivate a greater sense of self-awareness and self-intelligence in association with that, which is, as far as I'm concerned, indistinguishable from wisdom, especially when we develop a deeper understanding of ourselves and learn to regulate ourselves in relation to our self-intelligence. So that's all I wanted to say in this video, so I hope you enjoy.